Professor Chow here. I'm back with another video for test coverage within Eclipse. I'm going to go through this test coverage in Eclipse example and load this into Eclipse, and then go through some of the coverage pieces and how to use coverage within Eclipse and also JUnit within Eclipse. So let's get started. First, we're going to create a Java project. File, new, Java project. And we're going to call this one coverage example. And as always, we're going to use project folder as the root for source and class files. Set it up into the default location. We'll just call this coverage since I already have a coverage example that is taking up that space. Again, hit finish here. That will create the coverage example project. Then we'll double click that. File, new, class. We're going to call this class example.java. I'm going to copy this existing code. Java. And I'm just going to finish that out and paste in the existing code. So I'll save that. Then what we want to do is set up a JUnit test file for this. So we'll go File, New, JUnit test case. And we're going to use new JUnit 4 test, not a Jupyter test, which is the default. We're going to come back to the website here and grab all of this existing code. What we could do is actually walk through it from scratch, and maybe I'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select here which class I want to test, and it's going to be example. And then I'm going to generate the comments for it. Hit next. I want to test this method, which is the soda party method. So I'm going to do that, and I'll create final method stubs and create tasks for the generated methods. Go ahead and do finish. I'm going to add the JUnit 4 library to the build path so I can run JUnit. And that's going to create all of my JUnit test pieces. I'm going to remove this extraneous comment here. And we'll call this example test. Test example class. Author there, version here. I'm going to add an honor code statement. And I'll save that out. I'm going to remove the wildcard import and the static import and leave it with just the check style approved import org.junit.assert. That'll allow it to pass check style. Then I'm going to come into here and actually start to write my tests. I'm going to first do a test to do coverage on the class itself. So I'm going to do a default one, and I'll grab that from the actual one here just so I don't have to type all of this again, because I've already created it. And this is the default test just to get coverage of the actual class itself. So in order to run a JUnit test, you want to click on this Run Example, and I'm going to proceed. I'm going to allow this. All right, and it's going to show over here that I've passed my default test, which is just running and creating a new instance, and it has failed this other one, which I have not implemented yet. So there's the result of my JUnit run. Then if I look over here, I'm not seeing coverage yet because I have not actually done anything as far as coverage testing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write a couple of tests. Let's do a bad party to cover some bad parties here. And we'll call this the bad party test. So this test bad party will test false as what our expected output is for this. I'm going to go ahead and comment out these items first so that we only have testing with 30 as a example here, because this one here, if we have 30 sodas here, it's going to test just that area here less than the 40 on the tolerance here. So now if I go ahead and run this test, proceed, I'm going to pass this bad party test and the default test again. Now to run coverage testing, I'm going to click on this one here, this coverage one, which is the green and red bar with the play button on it. So if I click on that, it's going to ask me to do a coverage test. I'm going to proceed, and it's going to highlight the code that is run in both my example test.java, which is saying all of these ran and they're all green, and in my example, it's actually going to give me the percentage that is covered. So if you look down here, you can see that example.java was 74% covered. And the example, the method here, soda party, was 71.4% covered. So coverage wise, we're covering all of the green code. That first default test covered this public class example instantiation test. Then over here, we've covered these pieces of code by running through things that would test these. We have not covered things that are greater than 40. So in order to do that, we're going to have to add something that's greater than 40. So let's add in this one here and rerun our coverage testing. And we've upped our coverage now to 90%. So we're actually coming in and testing more of our code here. We still don't have something in the 40 to 60 range. So we're going to need to add a test in that range. Let's go ahead and add the rest of these tests and see if we get any closer to 100%. We'll run our coverage test again. Now we're at 92% covered. So we've got 92%. We have missed a few here. We've covered both branches of if it is the weekend, but we're missing one of two branches here where the sodas is greater than or equal to 40. We have the less than 40, but we don't have a greater than well covered yet. So let's go ahead and finish this out and add our last test here for a good party in. And we'll go ahead and put these tests actually into this test soda party. All right, so let's test one of these. We'll add this 50 value in and see if we get more coverage. Yes, and we're at 95% coverage now. We've covered everything but this statement here. We still need something that's going to cover the second branch of here if it is the weekend and less than 30. So weekend is true, and we're less than or equal to 40. So it's going to be somewhere in this section here that we're going to get that piece of coverage. Let's go ahead and add one more at a time here. We'll see if we get more coverage. We're now at 100% coverage. We have run all of the sections here that we needed to, because we finally hit this greater than or equal to 40, and weekend is true, then the party was good. And that test was the one that covered that. So you can see it only took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this 8th default test, so that we got 100% coverage in JUnit and to Eclipse. Again, now we're showing 100% coverage, and if we submit this to Autolab, we would get 100% coverage now for our program. That's not to say that we would necessarily have everything solved correctly for the actual problem per se when submitting in Autolab, but now we're at least getting our test to cover 100% of our solution.